The salvage ship Wanderer's Hope drifted through the debris field like a metal ghost hunting for treasure among the bones of dead starships. Captain Sarah Chen pressed her face against the observation deck's reinforced viewport, watching chunks of twisted metal and frozen atmosphere tumble past in the endless dance of space junk. 3 days they had been picking through this particular graveyard, and so far they had found nothing worth the fuel they had burned to get here. "Captain, I'm getting some unusual readings from Sector 7, called out Marcus Rivera, her scanner operator. His voice carried that particular tone that meant he had found something interesting but wasn't quite sure what to make of it. Sarah had learned to trust that tone over the 5 years they had worked together. Sarah pushed herself away from the viewport and floated over to Marcus's station, her magnetic boots clicking against the deck plates as she activated them. The Wanderer's Hope was an old ship, built back when artificial gravity was still too expensive for most civilian vessels. She had grown to prefer the freedom of zero-G anyway. "What kind of readings?" she asked, peering over Marcus's shoulder at the scanner display. The screen showed a three-dimensional map of the debris field, with their ship at the center and thousands of objects scattered around them like stars in a digital constellation. Marcus pointed to a blinking red dot near the edge of their scanner range. "Life support signatures. Very faint, but definitely artificial. The power source is almost depleted, maybe 6 or 7 hours left at most." He paused, his fingers dancing over the controls as he refined the scan. "Captain, the configuration doesn't match any known human, Centauri, or Altarian design. This is something new." Sarah felt her pulse quicken. First contact protocols were clear, but they were also written for military vessels with full diplomatic teams and xenobiology experts. The Wanderer's Hope was a salvage ship with a crew of 12, most of whom were more comfortable with plasma cutters than first contact situations. Still, if there was someone alive out there, they had a moral obligation to help. "Plot an intercept course," she ordered. "And wake up Dr. Yamamoto. If we're dealing with an unknown species, I want our medical officer ready for anything." The journey to the mysterious object took 47 minutes, during which Sarah found herself pacing the small confines of the bridge. Through the viewport, she could see their destination growing larger as they approached. It was unlike anything she had ever seen before. The structure was organic in appearance, more grown than built. Smooth curves dominated its design, with what looked like bioluminescent panels scattered across its surface. Most of these panels were dark now, but a few still pulsed with a faint blue-green light that reminded Sarah of deep ocean creatures from Earth's abyssal depths. "I'm reading one life form aboard," Marcus reported, his voice hushed with wonder. "Extremely weak biosignatures. Heart rate is barely detectable, and the atmospheric composition inside is almost completely depleted of oxygen. Whatever's in there is dying." Dr. Yamamoto arrived on the bridge, still adjusting her emergency medical kit. Elena Yamamoto was a small woman with silver hair and steady hands that had saved more lives than Sarah could count. She took one look at the alien vessel and immediately began preparing her portable life support equipment. "Can we dock with it?" Dr. Yamamoto asked, all business despite the historic nature of the situation. Marcus shook his head. "No compatible docking ports. We'll need to use the emergency airlocks and create a temporary seal. I can modify the umbilical to match their hull configuration, but it'll take time we might not have." Sarah made the decision that would change everything. "Do it." Marcus, start the modifications. Elena, prep for emergency extraction. If this being is dying, we're not going to let it happen on our watch. As Marcus worked frantically to adapt their docking equipment, Sarah found herself staring at the alien ship. There was something profoundly sad about it, floating alone in the vastness of space with its lights slowly dying one by one. She couldn't explain the feeling, but it reminded her of a wounded animal seeking shelter in a storm. The docking procedure took 38 minutes, during which the alien life signs continued to weaken. When Marcus finally achieved a successful seal, Sarah was the first through the airlock, followed closely by Dr. Yamamoto and 2 security officers carrying emergency life support equipment. The interior of the alien vessel was as organic as its exterior. The walls seemed to pulse with a faint rhythm, and bioluminescent strips provided just enough light to see by. The air was thin and cold, filled with an alien scent that reminded Sarah of rain on summer grass mixed with something sharper, like ozone after a lightning strike. They found her in what appeared to be the ship's central chamber. The alien was humanoid in basic structure but clearly not human. Her skin had a subtle iridescent quality that shifted between blue and green depending on the light, and delicate gill-like structures along her neck fluttered weakly with each shallow breath. She was tall and elegant, with elongated limbs and fingers that ended in what looked like natural bioluminescent tips. Her clothing was integrated into her body somehow, appearing to be as much a part of her as her skin. But it was her eyes that broke Sarah's heart. Large and expressive, they held an intelligence that was unmistakably sentient, and pain that was unmistakably universal. When the alien saw the humans entering her ship, those eyes widened with what Sarah could only interpret as desperate hope mixed with fear. "Oh my God," Dr. Yamamoto whispered, immediately moving to the alien side. "She's in severe respiratory distress. The atmospheric composition in here is all wrong for her physiology." She began connecting portable life support equipment, her movements quick but gentle. The alien tried to speak, but only managed a weak sound that was part whistle, part harmony. The universal translator that Sarah wore couldn't make sense of it, but the meaning was clear enough. She was trying to thank them. "It's okay," Sarah said softly, kneeling beside the alien despite having no idea if she could understand human speech. "You're safe now. We're going to help you." As Dr. Yamamoto worked to stabilize their unexpected patient, Sarah noticed something that made her blood run cold. The alien's arms and hands showed clear signs of restraints, angry marks that suggested she had been bound for a long time. Her clothing was torn in places, and there were what looked like injection sites along her neck and arms. "Elena," Sarah said quietly, "take a look at these marks when you get a chance. This doesn't look like accident trauma." Dr. Yamamoto's face darkened as she noticed what Sarah was pointing out. "These are definitely restraint marks. And these injection sites, someone was experimenting on her." Her voice carried a cold anger that Sarah had rarely heard from the usually calm doctor. The alien's eyes followed their conversation, and Sarah was struck by the intelligence she saw there. This being understood that they were discussing her injuries, and the gratitude in her expression was mixed with something that looked like shame. As if she somehow blamed herself for what had been done to her. "Who did this to you?" Sarah asked, though she knew the alien couldn't understand her words. She hoped her tone would convey the sympathy she felt. The alien's response was another weak harmonic sound, but this time it was accompanied by a gesture toward the debris field outside. She was pointing toward the wreckage that surrounded them, and the implication was clear. Her captors were dead, but she had been left to die slowly in the ruins of their ship. "We need to get her back to our ship," Dr. Yamamoto said, checking her medical readings. "I can stabilize her here temporarily, but she needs proper medical facilities if she's going to survive. Her physiology is unlike anything I've ever seen, but the basic principles of trauma medicine should still apply." As they prepared to transport the alien to their ship, Sarah noticed something else. The bioluminescent panels throughout the ship weren't just dying randomly. They were following a pattern, shutting down in a sequence that suggested the ship's living systems were directing their remaining power to keep their passenger alive as long as possible. The ship itself was sacrificing its own existence to protect the being inside. The realization hit Sarah like a physical blow. This wasn't just a damaged ship with a dying passenger. This was a living vessel that had chosen to save its companion at the cost of its own life. The organic ship and the alien being were connected somehow, and the ship was literally giving its life force to keep her alive. "Marcus," she called into her comm unit, "we need emergency medical transport now. And prepare the medical bay for extended life support. We're dealing with something completely outside our experience here." As they carefully moved the alien toward their ship, Sarah found herself wondering what kind of monsters could have done this to such a clearly intelligent and gentle being. The restraint marks, the injection sites, the way the alien seemed to expect pain rather than help, it all painted a picture of systematic abuse that made Sarah's stomach turn. But they had found her in time. Whatever had happened before, whatever horrors she had endured, that was over now. Sarah made a silent promise as they carried the alien through the airlock and into the safety of the Wanderer's Hope. They would help her heal, they would help her find her way home if possible, and they would make sure that whoever had done this to her would face consequences for their actions. The alien's bioluminescent fingertips pulsed weakly as Dr. Yamamoto connected her to the ship's medical systems. Even in her weakened state, she was trying to communicate something. Sarah didn't need a translator to understand the basic message. After what must have been months or even years of torment, someone had finally shown her kindness. As the medical bay doors closed behind them, Sarah took one last look at the organic ship they had left behind. Its remaining lights were fading rapidly now, and she realized she was watching a death. The ship had completed its final mission, delivering its precious cargo to safety. Within hours, it would be just another piece of debris in the vast graveyard of space. But its sacrifice had not been in vain. The being they had rescued was alive, and, as long as there was breath in Sarah's body, she would remain that way. The Wanderer's hope had found something far more valuable than salvageable metal or rare elements. They had found someone who needed their help, and, in the vast darkness of space, that was worth more than any treasure. Dr. Elena Yamamoto had delivered babies in zero gravity, performed surgery during meteor showers, and once saved a man's life using nothing but medical supplies from a mining station's first aid kit. But nothing in her 23 years as a ship's doctor had prepared her for treating an alien being whose biology defied everything she thought she knew about medicine. The alien lay on the medical bay's primary examination table, surrounded by monitors that struggled to make sense of her vital signs. Her bioluminescent fingertips cast shifting patterns of blue-green light across the ceiling, pulsing in rhythm with what Elena assumed was her heartbeat. The universal translator had been working continuously for 6 hours now, slowly building a linguistic database from the soft harmonic sounds the alien made in her sleep. Her cellular structure is unlike anything in our databases, Elena murmured to herself, studying the bioscanner readings for the 100th time. The integration of organic and biotechnical elements suggests a symbiotic relationship between her body and some kind of living technology. It's beautiful, actually. Captain Chen entered the medical bay carrying 2 cups of coffee and the expression of someone who hadn't slept in far too long. Any progress on understanding her physiology? She asked, handing Elena one of the cups. Elena accepted the coffee gratefully, using the warm ceramic to steady her hands. She's stable now, but her biology is fascinating. Her respiratory system can process both atmospheric oxygen and some kind of energy drawn directly from bioluminescent organisms. The gill-like structures on her neck aren't actually gills, they're organic processors that can convert electromagnetic energy into breathable atmosphere. It's like she's part plant, part animal, and part living machine. But she'll survive? Sarah asked, concern evident in her voice. She's remarkably resilient. Her body has been healing from extensive trauma, both physical and psychological. The injection sites I found suggest someone was experimenting with her biochemistry, probably trying to understand how her biotechnical integration works. Elena's voice carried a cold anger. Whoever did this was systematic about it. They were studying her like a laboratory specimen. Sarah moved closer to the examination table, studying their patient's peaceful expression. In sleep, the alien's features had relaxed, and the constant tension that had marked her face when they first found her was gone. Has she said anything we can understand yet? The translator is making progress. Her language appears to be partially harmonic, using sound frequencies and bioluminescent patterns together to create meaning. It's incredibly sophisticated, like singing with light. Elena called up a holographic display showing sound wave patterns. From what we can determine so far, her name is something like Lyralii, though that's probably just an approximation our vocal cords can handle. As if summoned by the mention of her name, Lyralii's eyes opened slowly. The large, expressive organs immediately focused on Sarah and Elena with an awareness that was startlingly alert for someone who had been near death just hours before. She tried to sit up, moving with a fluid grace that reminded Sarah of a dancer or perhaps a deep-sea creature adapted to three-dimensional movement. Easy, Elena said softly, gently pressing Lyralii back against the examination table. You need to rest. Your body is still healing from severe trauma. Lyralii's bioluminescent fingertips pulsed in a complex pattern while she produced a series of harmonic sounds. The universal translator crackled to life, producing a halting but understandable translation. Gratitude, overwhelming gratitude, you saved this one's life pattern, did not expect kindness from strangers in the void. Sarah felt her throat tighten at the obvious emotion in the translated words. You don't need to thank us. Anyone would have done the same thing. The translator worked for a moment to process Lyralii's response, and, when it came, it hit Sarah like a punch to the stomach. No, this one has learned, beings find, suffering convenient, exploitation profitable, kindness is, rare gift in, darkness between stars. Elena and Sarah exchanged glances, both thinking the same thing. How long had this being suffered before they found her? What kind of horrors had she endured that made simple medical care seem like an overwhelming kindness? Can you tell us what happened to you? Elena asked gently. We found evidence that someone was experimenting on you. We need to understand your injuries to help you heal properly. Lyralia's bioluminescent patterns shifted to darker blues and purples, colors that somehow conveyed sadness and fear even before the translator rendered her words. Taken from birth pod during sacred migration, Shipmother tried to protect, but raiders had weapons designed for living vessels. Her fingertips dimmed almost to darkness. Watched Shipmother die, screaming in frequencies only young ones can hear. Sarah felt sick. This being had been orphaned and kidnapped as a child, then subjected to years of experimentation. The organic ship they had found her in hadn't been her captor's vessel, it had been what remained of her mother, literally giving the last of her life to protect her daughter. How long were you held captive? Elena asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. Time moves, strangely in pain, maybe 12 cycles of Homestar's dancing, maybe more. The translation paused as Lyralii struggled with concepts that didn't translate directly. They studied biotechnical integration, wanted to understand how might people bond with shipmothers, created many offspring experiments, all failed, all died. 12 years. Sarah closed her eyes, trying to process the enormity of what this being had endured. 12 years of being treated like a laboratory animal, watching failed experiments that were probably clones or artificial versions of her own people die over and over again. The others like you, Elena said carefully, the experiments that failed, were they your family? Lyralii's bioluminescence flickered in a pattern that needed no translation, grief so profound it seemed to fill the room with its weight. Created from this one's living essence, sister patterns and brother possibilities, born in pain, died in confusion, never knowing, sky songs or shipmother's love. Her voice, even through the mechanical translation, carried a heartbreak that was universally recognizable. This one failed them, could not teach, could not protect, could not save. Sarah couldn't take any more. She sat down heavily in the medical base chair, struggling with anger so intense it made her hands shake. Listen to me, Lyralii. What happened to you, what happened to the others, none of that was your fault. You were a victim, not a collaborator. The beings who did this to you are monsters, and if there's any justice in the universe, they'll pay for what they've done. Justice is. Lyralii paused, seeming to struggle with the concept. This one knows only pain and laboratories, and, now, unexpected kindness. What is justice, for those who create, suffering for learning? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Elena found herself wondering the same thing. What kind of justice could possibly balance the scales for 12 years of torture and the systematic murder of artificially created sentient beings? Justice is making sure this never happens to anyone else, Sarah said finally. Justice is helping you heal and find your way home. Justice is ensuring that the knowledge of what was done to you reaches beings who can prevent it from happening again. Lyralii's bioluminescent patterns shifted to warmer colors, golds and soft greens that somehow conveyed hope mixed with uncertainty. Home. She whispered through the translator. This one dreams of sky songs and shipmothers dancing between stars but does not know if home still exists. Raiders scattered, my people like seeds in solar wind. Elena checked her medical readings again, noting that Lyralii's vital signs were growing stronger as they talked. There was something about being heard, about having her story acknowledged, that seemed to be helping her heal on a fundamental level. We'll help you find them, Elena said, surprised by her own certainty. Somehow, we'll help you find your people. But, first, Sarah added, you need to regain your strength. You're safe aboard this ship. No one is going to hurt you or experiment on you. You have our word on that. Lyralii's fingertips pulsed in a rapid pattern that the translator rendered as a complex concept combining gratitude, disbelief, and desperate hope. Words are wind between worlds, but your actions speak in frequencies this one can trust. She paused, seeming to gather strength. Shipmother's final gift was showing this one the coordinates of sacred gathering where survivors meet when migrations are broken. Sarah leaned forward intently. You know where other survivors might be? Deep memory, Shipmother's dying song, included navigation harmonics to sanctuary where light gathers, but distances, many void jumps, and this one cannot pilot without Shipmother bond. Elena began running calculations on her medical computer. How long before you could handle space travel safely? Your body is healing remarkably fast, but trauma like you've experienced takes time to recover from properly. Biotechnical systems regenerating faster than expected, Lyralii replied, examining her own fingertips with wonder. Shipmother's final gift includes enhanced healing protocols, perhaps 7 or 8 of your day cycles, before this one is stable for void jump. A week. In a week, they could begin the journey to help reunite this being with whatever remained of her people. Sarah found herself already planning the course modifications they would need to make to their salvage run. The company wouldn't like the delay, but sometimes there were more important things than profit margins. There's something else, Elena said hesitantly. The biotechnical integration in your body, some of the experimental modifications they made to you, they're still active. I can't remove them safely without understanding their full function, and some of them actually seem to be helping your recovery process. Lyralii's pattern shifted to darker blues again. This one is changed by pain, no longer pure, as ship mothers require, maybe rejected by own people now. That's not true, Sarah said firmly. Any people worth finding will see past the scars to the person who survived. You're not contaminated or broken, you're a survivor of something terrible, and that makes you strong, not weak. The alien's bioluminescent pattern shifted through several colors before settling on a warm amber that seemed to indicate contemplation. Through the translator, her voice carried a note of something that might have been hope. This one will trust in kindness, until proven dangerous to do so, will trust in human words about strength found in surviving darkness. As Elena continued her medical monitoring and Sarah updated the ship's logs, Lyralii began to sing softly to herself. The sound was hauntingly beautiful, a complex harmony that seemed to make the very air in the medical bay shimmer with sympathetic resonance. Her bioluminescent fingertips created patterns of light that danced in perfect synchronization with the melody. What is she singing? Elena asked, watching the display on the universal translator struggle to process the complex musical language. The answer, when it came, made both humans stop what they were doing to listen. Song of Shipmothers Lost, Names of Sisters, Taken by Void, Melody of Hope, for reunification, beyond darkness. This one sings for those who cannot sing for themselves. In that moment, Sarah understood something fundamental about the being they had rescued. Despite 12 years of torture, despite watching her family die, despite being modified and experimented upon until she barely resembled her original form, Lyralii still carried within her the songs of her people. She was a living repository of culture and memory, a survivor who had refused to let her captors destroy what made her who she was. The salvage ship Wanderer's Hope continued its course through the debris field, but its mission had changed completely. They were no longer hunting for valuable scrap metal. They were carrying something infinitely more precious, a being who represented hope for the survival of an entire species, and the chance for humans to prove that kindness could exist in the darkness between the stars. The crew of the Wanderer's Hope had seen many strange things during their years of salvage work, but watching an alien being slowly heal from 12 years of trauma was unlike anything they had ever experienced. Over the past 5 days, Lyralii had transformed from a dying victim into something that reminded Sarah Chun of a flower blooming after a long winter. Engineering Chief Tom Bradley emerged from the ship's data core, wiping his hands on a maintenance rag and shaking his head in wonder. "Captain, you need to see what she's done to our navigation systems. I've never seen anything like it." Sarah followed Tom to the navigation station, where Lyralii sat cross-legged in front of the holographic star chart, her bioluminescent fingertips dancing through three-dimensional space as she traced pathways between distant stars. The display showed course calculations of impossible complexity, factoring in gravitational fields, solar wind patterns, and stellar phenomena that their computers couldn't even identify. "She's not just plotting a course to this sanctuary place," Tom explained, his voice filled with professional admiration. "She's calculating optimal routes that take advantage of natural phenomena to reduce travel time by 60%. Our navigation computer is learning from her, and, frankly, it's making me feel a bit obsolete." Lyralii looked up from her work, her large eyes holding an expression that somehow managed to be both apologetic and amused. Through the universal translator, which had become remarkably fluent in her harmonic language over the past few days, she said, "Apologies for unauthorized interface with shipmind, old habits from ship-mother bonding, do not wish to cause disruption." "No disruption at all," Sarah assured her. "We're just amazed at how you're able to do this. Our computers have been trying to calculate an optimal course for 3 days. Shipminds think in straight lines and simple mathematics," Lyralii explained, her fingertips creating new patterns in the holographic display. But void spaces, living thing, has moods and currents and hidden pathways, must feel your way through darkness, not calculate your way. Dr. Yamamoto entered the bridge carrying a data pad filled with medical readings. Her recovery rate continues to exceed every projection, she reported to Sarah. The biotechnical modifications forced on her appear to be integrating with her natural healing processes. It's like her body is remembering how to be healthy again. The Painmakers. Lyralii said quietly, they tried to break biotechnical bonds, but Shipmother's final gift included repair protocols, hidden in genetic, deep structures, body remembers what it was before darkness. Sarah watched as Lyralii continued her navigation work, noting how the aliens' movements had become more fluid and confident each day. The terrified, broken being they had rescued was still there beneath the surface, but she was slowly being replaced by someone stronger, someone who had survived the unsurvivable and was choosing to trust again. Lyralii, Sarah said carefully, the coordinates you're calculating, how do you know this sanctuary still exists? It's been 12 years since you were taken. The aliens' bioluminescent patterns shifted to thoughtful blues and greens. Deep void communications travel faster than shiplight, sometimes Painmakers, let this one hear scattered signals from surviving shipmothers calling to lost children. Sanctuary song still echoes in empty spaces. Marcus Rivera looked up from his scanner station, excitement evident in his voice. Captain, I'm picking up something on the long-range communications array. It's faint, but there's a repeating signal coming from the direction Lyralii has been plotting toward. The frequency matches some of the harmonic patterns in her language. Lyralii went completely still, her bioluminescence fading to almost nothing as she concentrated on listening to something the humans couldn't hear. When she spoke again, her voice through the translator carried a tremor of emotion so intense it made Sarah's chest tighten. Shipmother's calling, survivors home, the song says, gather at light between worlds, where broken migrations can be made whole, they sing of hope beyond the dark years. How far is this sanctuary? Sarah asked, already knowing she was committed to making the journey regardless of the distance. 17 void jumps, through passages that most ships cannot navigate safely, but this one can guide way through hidden currents if crew family trusts alien navigation methods. Sarah looked around the bridge at her crew. Tom Bradley nodded immediately, his engineer's curiosity overriding any concerns about unconventional navigation. Marcus shrugged and grinned, the expression of a man who had spent years following sensor readings into the unknown. Dr. Yamamoto simply smiled and said, my patient needs to go home. That's reason enough for me. Then, it's settled, Sarah announced. We're taking Lyralii home. Tom, start preparing the ship for extended void jumps. Marcus, work with Lyralii to establish communication protocols with these shipmother signals. Elena, make sure our medical systems are ready for anything we might encounter. As the crew dispersed to begin preparations, Sarah remained on the bridge with Lyralii, watching the alien continue her complex navigation calculations. There was something hypnotic about the way her fingertips moved through the holographic starfield, creating patterns that seemed to pulse with their own internal logic. Lyralii, Sarah said quietly, what you went through, 12 years of experimentation and torture, how did you survive it? How did you keep from breaking completely? The alien's patterns shifted through several colors before settling on a deep gold that somehow conveyed both sadness and strength. This one carried songs of shipmothers in memory places Painmakers could not reach or destroy, sang silent harmonies to keep alive the voices of lost family. She paused, her fingertips creating a particularly complex pattern in the holographic display. Also, this one believed, someone would come, eventually, kindness exists, in universe, even when darkness seems endless and complete. Sarah felt tears threatening to form in her eyes. This being had endured 12 years of systematic torture by holding on to faith that somewhere in the universe, there were still people who would show her kindness. And, somehow, against all odds, she had been right. The others, Sarah asked hesitantly, the ones they created from your genetic material, you said you felt responsible for them. But, you weren't responsible. You were as much a victim as they were. Lyralii's bioluminescence dimmed as she considered this. Painmakers use this one's living essence to create sister patterns and brother possibilities, watch them struggle and die, could not protect or teach them proper songs. But, you tried, Dr. Yamamoto said, entering the conversation as she returned to the bridge. I've been analyzing the psychological trauma patterns in your medical scans. You formed emotional bonds with those artificially created beings. You mourned each one that died. That's not failure, that's love. Love? Lyreliai's translator seemed to struggle with the concept for a moment. This emotion includes pain, and protection, and desperate caring for beings not genetically identical? That's exactly what love is, Sarah said with a gentle smile. And the fact that you felt it for those other beings, even in circumstances designed to break your spirit, proves that you're still capable of the connections that make you who you are. Your people won't reject you for being changed by trauma. If anything, they'll see that you carried their values through the darkest possible circumstances. Lyreliai was quiet for a long moment, her fingertips creating slow, contemplative patterns in the navigation display. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a note of wonder. Human crew shows, this one that survival includes more than living through pain and staying alive, means choosing to trust again, choosing to hope again, choosing to love again. That's what makes someone truly strong, Elena said. Not the ability to endure suffering, but the courage to remain vulnerable enough to connect with others after being hurt. Over the next several hours, as the Wanderer's Hope began its journey toward the hidden sanctuary, Sarah noticed changes in Lyreliai that went beyond physical healing. The alien began moving through the ship with increasing confidence, offering to help with navigation calculations and even assisting Tom with some of the more complex engineering challenges. Most remarkably, she began teaching the crew fragments of her people's songs. Marcus discovered he had a natural talent for producing rough approximations of the harmonic frequencies, while Dr. Yamamoto learned to create simple bioluminescent patterns using medical equipment modified for the purpose. "Why are you teaching us your songs?" Sarah asked during one of these impromptu music lessons. "Aren't they sacred to your people? Songs are meant to be shared." Lyreliai replied, her patterns shifting to warm golds and greens. Painmakers tried to steal songs through force and experimentation, but willing sharing makes songs stronger, not weaker. Human crew carrying shipmother melodies means some part of lost ones lives on. Sarah realized that in teaching them her people's music, Lyreliai was honoring the memory of those who had died during her captivity. Every note Marcus managed to reproduce, every light pattern Elena learned to create, was a small victory against the beings who had tried to destroy an entire culture through systematic torture and experimentation. As the Wanderer's Hope made its first void jump toward the sanctuary, following navigation patterns that defied conventional physics but somehow felt absolutely correct, Sarah understood that their mission had evolved far beyond simple rescue. They weren't just returning a lost individual to her people. They were carrying proof that even in the darkest reaches of space, even after years of systematic cruelty, the fundamental connections that bound sentient beings together could survive. They were proving that love was stronger than fear, that hope was more powerful than despair, and that sometimes the most important salvage operation was rescuing someone's faith in the possibility of kindness. The ship sang as it traveled through the void, filled with the harmonics of an ancient people's music being learned by human voices. In the navigation chamber, Lyreliai's bioluminescent fingertips painted patterns of light that guided them through passages between the stars, following currents of energy that connected all living things across the vast darkness of space. For the first time in 12 years, she was going home. And she was not going alone. The 14th void jump brought them to a region of space that defied every law of physics Sarah Chen thought she understood. Instead of the usual darkness broken only by distant stars, they emerged into a nebula that pulsed with organic bioluminescence, vast tendrils of living light that stretched across millions of kilometers. It was as if they had jumped inside some enormous celestial organism. "Captain," Marcus Rivera called from his scanner station, his voice filled with awe, "I'm reading massive biosignatures throughout this entire region. This isn't just a nebula, it's alive." Lyreliai moved to the observation deck's viewport, pressing her hands against the reinforced transparent material. Her bioluminescent fingertips blazed with light that seemed to respond to the cosmic organisms surrounding them, creating patterns that mirrored the vast movements of the living nebula. "Sanctuary where light gathers," she whispered through the universal translator, her voice carrying emotions too complex for the device to fully convey. "Shipmothers, so many shipmothers, this one thought, never to see such beauty again." Dr. Yamamoto joined Sarah at the viewport, watching as Lyreliai's light patterns grew more intense. Her bioluminescence is responding to something out there. It's like she's communicating with the nebula itself. As if summoned by Lyreliai's lights, shapes began to emerge from the living nebula. They were shipmothers, enormous organic vessels that moved with the graceful fluidity of deep-sea creatures. Each one was unique in design, but all shared the same elegant curves and bioluminescent panels that had characterized the dying ship where they had found Lyralii. My God, Tom Bradley breathed, having joined the group at the viewport. There must be hundreds of them. And they're all alive. The ship mothers were approaching in what Sarah recognized as a formal formation, though unlike any military pattern she had ever seen. They moved in spirals and flowing curves, their lights pulsing in complex rhythms that created a symphony of visual music across the vast expanse of space. "They're singing," Lyralii said, tears flowing down her face as her translator struggled to convey the depth of her emotion. Ship mothers sing welcome home songs for lost daughter and songs of curiosity wonder for kind strangers who brought child of void safely through darkness. Sarah felt a chill of responsibility as she realized what this moment meant. The Wanderer's hope was about to make first contact with an entire civilization, and they were doing it while carrying one of their people who had been tortured for 12 years by unknown captors. The diplomatic implications were staggering. "Lyralii," she said carefully, "what should we do? How do we approach your people? We don't want to seem threatening or cause any diplomatic incidents." Before Lyralii could answer, the communications system activated on its own, filling the bridge with harmonious sounds that seemed to bypass the ears and speak directly to the soul. The universal translator worked frantically to process the complex musical language. "Unknown ship carrying lost child, you are welcomed into Sanctuary Heart, by ship mothers of 17 scattered clans. We sing gratitude beyond measure for kindness shown to child of our void when darkness had consumed all hope." Sarah activated the communications system, hoping her words would translate appropriately. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the vessel Wanderer's Hope. We are honored to have helped Lyralii, and we're grateful for your welcome. We come in peace and friendship." The response came not in words but in music, a harmony so beautiful and complex that it brought tears to every human eye on the bridge. When the translator finally rendered meaning from the song, the message was simple but profound. "Peace song friendship is music that makes all hearts sing together. You have returned precious daughter of void, and proven kindness exists in dark spaces between worlds." Lyralii moved to the communication station, her fingertips dancing across the controls as she began to sing in response. Her voice, joining with the vast chorus of ship mothers, created harmonies that made the Wanderer's Hope itself seem to vibrate with sympathetic resonance. "What is she telling them?" Elena asked, watching the bioluminescent patterns that accompanied Lyralii's song. The translator worked to process the complex exchange, providing fragments of meaning. Story song, of capture, and pain years, and experiments, and dying shipmothers, final gift, and strangers who showed kindness without payment or expectation. As Lyralii's song continued, Sarah noticed changes in the shipmothers surrounding them. Their movements became more agitated, their light patterns shifting to deeper, angrier colors. The harmony of their response carried notes that needed no translation. They were expressing rage at what had been done to one of their own. But then, Lyralii's song shifted, and her tale moved from suffering to rescue. She sang of humans who had risked themselves to save a dying alien, who had provided medical care without asking for anything in return, who had changed their entire mission to help her find her way home. The shipmother's lights gradually shifted back to warmer colors as they absorbed this part of the story. Their formation changed as well, drawing closer to the Wanderer's Hope in what was clearly a gesture of acceptance and protection. "They're beautiful," Tom said quietly, watching the graceful dance of the enormous living ships. "And there are so many of them. How did they survive whatever scattered their people?" Lyralii paused in her song to answer, though she kept one hand on the communications controls to maintain contact with her people. "Shipmothers are wise and patient. When raiders began hunting for biotechnical secrets, greatest shipmothers gathered survivors at ancient meeting places, hiding in void spaces between normal navigation routes. Like a hidden refugee camp," Sarah realized. "They've been protecting the survivors while trying to find the missing ones." "Yes," Lyralii confirmed. "And now shipmothers learn that kind strangers exist in universe, beings who help without seeking profit. This changes everything for surviving clans." One of the largest shipmothers approached the Wanderer's Hope directly, its bioluminescent panels pulsing in patterns that reminded Sarah of a formal greeting. The communication that followed was directed specifically at the human crew. "Kind strangers, human people, shipmothers, offer great honor. Will you accept bonding ceremony to become honorary children of void spaces, friends beyond species, forever welcome in Sanctuary Light?" Sarah looked around the bridge at her crew, seeing wonder and acceptance in every face. "What does this bonding ceremony involve?" she asked. "Sharing of life songs and life patterns, biotechnical integration at symbolic level will not change human biology but will create permanent connection to shipmother consciousness network." Dr. Yamamoto stepped forward, her medical mind immediately focusing on the implications. "Is it safe for our physiology? We don't have biotechnical integration like Lyraliai's people. Shipmothers are wise and gentle, will adapt. Ceremony for human biology creates connection without alteration, like learning new language, but for consciousness instead of words." Sarah made the decision that would change humanity's relationship with the universe forever. "We accept the honor. We would be privileged to become friends beyond species with your people." The response from the shipmothers was a harmony so joyous it seemed to make the very fabric of spacetime ring with celebration. The largest shipmother extended what appeared to be a bioluminescent docking tube toward the Wanderer's Hope, its organic surfaces reshaping themselves to create a perfect seal with the human ship's airlock. "This is unprecedented," Tom breathed. "First contact, alliance formation, and honorary adoption all in one day. The diplomatic corps is going to have heart attacks when they read our report." "If they believe our report," Marcus added with a grin. "Who's going to believe we stumbled into a hidden civilization by rescuing one torture victim from a debris field?" Lyraliai moved toward the airlock, then paused and turned back to the human crew. Her bioluminescent patterns had shifted to colors that conveyed deep gratitude mixed with something that might have been love, not romantic love, but the profound affection of family chosen rather than born. "Human crew, saved this one's life and spirit and hope, but more than saving, you gave gift of choosing kindness when cruelty would have been easier." Shipmothers sing your names in gratitude songs that will echo through void spaces until stars grow cold. "We couldn't have done anything else," Sarah replied simply. "When someone needs help, you help them. That's what sentient beings do for each other." Lyraliai's pattern shifted to warm golds that somehow conveyed both amusement and profound respect. "Human people think kindness is simple thing, but this one has learned in 12 pain years that choosing compassion over profit, choosing hope over fear, choosing love over hate, these are greatest powers in universe." As they prepared to board the shipmother for the bonding ceremony, Sarah realized that their simple salvage mission had become something unprecedented in human history. They weren't just making first contact with an alien civilization, they were proving that humanity could be trusted with the deepest secrets and most precious relationships of other species. The Wanderer's Hope had found something far more valuable than any salvage could ever be. They had found proof that in a universe that often seemed cold and empty, the simple choice to show kindness to a stranger could create connections that transcended species, language, and even biology itself. Through the viewport, the living nebula pulsed with the joy of reunion, its bioluminescent tendrils carrying messages of hope to scattered survivors throughout the galaxy. And, at the center of it all, a human salvage ship served as proof that some things in the universe were worth more than any treasure, things like compassion, courage, and the simple decision to help someone who needed it. 3 months after the bonding ceremony that made the crew of the Wanderer's Hope honorary members of the Void clan families, Captain Saracen stood on the observation deck of the massive shipmother Harmony of Deep Currents, watching human engineers work alongside biotechnical specialists to solve problems that neither species could have handled alone. The integration had been remarkable. Tom Bradley had proven especially adept at understanding biomechanical interfaces, his engineering mind adapting quickly to systems that grew and evolved rather than simply being built. Dr. Yamamoto had revolutionized medical care for trauma victims by combining human psychological therapy techniques with bioluminescent healing harmonics. Marcus Rivera had become something of a legend among the navigation specialists, able to feel his way through void currents with an intuitive understanding that complemented their harmonic calculations perfectly. But it was Lyraliai who had truly transformed over these months. No longer the broken, terrified being they had rescued from a dying ship, she had become a bridge between species, teaching humans the deep songs of the Void clans while learning from them about resilience, hope, and the power of choosing kindness in a hostile universe. Captain Chen, came Lyraliai's voice through the bioacoustic communication system that now linked human and Void clan ships throughout the sanctuary. "The Council of Singing Mothers requests your presence in the Harmony Chamber. We have important decisions to discuss." Sarah made her way through the organic corridors of the shipmother, marveling again at how the living vessel seemed to anticipate her needs, adjusting lighting and temperature as she moved. The Harmony Chamber was a vast spherical space at the heart of the ship, where the most important decisions affecting the entire sanctuary were made through musical consensus among the eldest shipmothers. When Sarah entered, she found representatives from 17 different clans gathered in a complex three-dimensional arrangement that somehow allowed every voice to be heard clearly. Lyralii waited near the chamber's center, her bioluminescent patterns brighter and more complex than Sarah had ever seen them. "Human friend Sarah," sang the eldest shipmother, her voice carrying the weight of centuries, "we gather to sing decision about future paths for void clans and human friends. Lyralii has shared song about dark years and pain makers who scattered our people. We must decide what justice means for those who create suffering for learning." Sarah felt the weight of the moment. Over the past months, she had learned that the void clans made all major decisions through musical consensus, with each voice adding harmony until a solution emerged that satisfied everyone. It was a form of democracy unlike anything humans had ever developed, based on empathy and emotional connection rather than argument and voting. "What options are you considering?" Sarah asked, though she was already beginning to understand through the harmonic undertones in the chamber that this decision would affect more than just the void clans. Lyralii's song rose above the others, her voice carrying new strength and confidence that made Sarah's heart swell with pride for how far she had come. "Painmakers who took this one, and others, still exist, still hunt for biotechnical secrets, still create laboratories of suffering. Scattered reports from survivor songs speak of new captures, new experiments, new death songs from lost ones." The harmony in the chamber shifted to darker tones as other voices joined in, sharing fragments of reports from throughout the galaxy. The beings who had tortured Lyralii were not unique, they were part of a larger network of individuals and organizations that saw sentient life as nothing more than raw material for experimentation and profit. Traditional Void Clan response would be to hide deeper, sing away to more distant. Sanctuary places wait for painmakers to lose interest, seek easier targets elsewhere. The eldest shipmother's song carried notes of frustration and uncertainty. But Lyralii's human friends have shown us different path, the path of choosing action over hiding. Sarah began to understand what was being asked of her and her crew. The Void Clans were considering abandoning their traditional policy of peaceful withdrawal in favor of taking direct action against the beings who had scattered their people and tortured their children. And they wanted human advice on how to proceed. "What kind of action are you considering?" Sarah asked, though part of her already knew the answer. "Working with human friends and other species to create justice network for finding and stopping painmakers who treat sentient life as experimental material." Lyralii's song had grown stronger as she spoke, filled with determination that made her words ring through the chamber like a bell. "This one has learned from human friends that survival means more than staying alive, means protecting others from experiencing same darkness." The eldest shipmother's harmony shifted to include notes of both approval and concern. "Such path requires void clans to abandon traditional ways to work with species who use violence as solution to engage with galaxy beyond safe sanctuary spaces." Dr. Yamamoto's voice joined the discussion through the bioacoustic link. "With respect, honored mothers, violence isn't the only tool humans use. We also have investigation, legal systems, diplomatic pressure, economic sanctions, and information networks. Justice doesn't have to mean warfare." Tom Bradley added his own thoughts to the harmony. "The Void Clans have technology and knowledge that could revolutionize how the galaxy deals with organized crime. Biotechnical healing could help torture victims recover completely. Your navigation abilities could help law enforcement track criminals through routes they thought were secret." Marcus Rivera's contribution carried excitement that was infectious even through the translation system. "And your ship mothers could go places conventional ships can't reach. You could rescue victims from situations that seem impossible, the way we rescued Lyralii, but on a much larger scale." Sarah watched as the harmony in the chamber began to shift, individual songs weaving together into something larger and more complex. This was how the Void Clans made decisions, not through debate and argument, but through a musical process that allowed every perspective to be heard and incorporated into a solution that satisfied everyone. "Human friends," sang the eldest shipmother after several minutes of complex harmonies, "have given Void Clan's gift of seeing new possibilities, but such cooperation requires trust beyond what has ever existed between species." "Trust has to start somewhere," Sarah said simply. 3 months ago, we were complete strangers. Lyralii trusted us enough to let us help her, and we trusted her enough to follow her navigation into places our ships had never gone. Look what that trust created. Lyreliai's bioluminescent patterns blazed with sudden intensity as she added her voice to the harmony. Human friends showed this one that choosing trust over fear, choosing hope over despair, choosing love over hate, these choices change universe, one heart at a time. The harmony in the chamber reached a crescendo that seemed to make the very walls pulse with sympathetic resonance. When it finally resolved into the complex chord that indicated consensus, Sarah felt tears streaming down her face from the sheer beauty of the sound. Void clans choose cooperation path with human friends and other honor species who value sentient life above profit. The eldest shipmother's song carried finality and determination. We'll create justice network to find and stop pain makers, to rescue captured ones, to heal trauma damage, to prevent future suffering. And we'll do all this without becoming like pain makers, without using cruelty as weapon. We'll prove that kindness is stronger than fear, that love is more powerful than hate. Lyreliai's voice carried a strength that seemed impossible for someone who had endured 12 years of torture. Over the following days, the sanctuary transformed into a hub of unprecedented interspecies cooperation. Void Clan shipmothers worked with human engineers to develop rescue ships that could navigate impossible routes and survive in hostile environments. Human medical specialists learned bioluminescent healing techniques while teaching Void Clan healers about psychological trauma treatment. Most importantly, they began reaching out to other species throughout the galaxy, sharing the story of how a simple act of kindness had led to an alliance that could change the nature of justice itself. Sarah stood again on the observation deck of the Harmony of Deep Currents, but this time she was watching the departure of the first joint human Void Clan rescue mission. The Wanderer's Hope flew in formation with 3 shipmothers, heading toward coordinates where intelligence suggested another captive was being held. Lyreliai joined her at the viewport, her bioluminescent patterns warm and content as they watched their friends disappear into the void jump. Do you ever regret it? Sarah asked quietly. Everything that happened to you, all the pain and suffering? If you could go back and change it, would you? Lyreliai was quiet for a long moment, her patterns shifting through complex colors as she considered the question. When she finally spoke, her words carried wisdom that seemed far older than her years. Pain years taught this one that universe contains darkness beyond imagining, but also taught that choosing kindness in face of cruelty creates light that can illuminate entire galaxy. She paused, her fingertips creating gentle patterns against the viewport. Without dark years, this one would never have met human friends, never learned that trust and hope and love are choices that make themselves stronger each time they are chosen. Sarah understood. Lyreliai wasn't saying she was grateful for the torture and experimentation. She was saying that the choice to remain capable of love and trust despite everything she had endured had become the foundation for something larger than either of their species could have achieved alone. So no, Lyreliai continued, would not change past pain, because it led to now joy and future hope for all who suffer in darkness, without knowing that light still exists. As they watched the bioluminescent currents of the living nebula carry messages of hope to survivors throughout the galaxy, Sarah realized that their simple salvage mission had become something unprecedented in galactic history. They had proven that the fundamental choice to help someone who needed it could create connections that transcended every barrier that had ever existed between species. The Wanderer's Hope had found the most valuable treasure in the universe, proof that kindness was not just a luxury for peaceful times, but the most powerful force for change in a cosmos that often seemed cold and empty. And that treasure was being shared now with anyone who needed to know that in the vast darkness between the stars, there were still beings who would choose to help rather than harm, to heal rather than hurt, to hope rather than despair. In the end, that was what made humanity truly exceptional, not their technology or their weapons or their courage, but their simple, stubborn insistence that every sentient being deserved kindness, regardless of species, origin, or circumstance. It was a philosophy that was spreading throughout the galaxy now, carried by shipmothers singing songs of hope in the deep void, proving that sometimes the most important revolutions began with nothing more than the decision to help someone who was hurt and forsaken.